Hi, Constanza. Good morning, and welcome to the farm.
I'm so excited that I get to talk to me and the followers of Kokurao. We all are so interested in mushroom, and I think it's such a hot topic right now. And people realize the benefits of mushrooms, and there's so much we need to know about it, or we try to learn. And I know you have, for me, the most knowledge, and you taught me so much about them, and I work with them, and I think they're incredible. And you are right on the farm with your mushrooms, and I'm very happy you're here. I would like to ask you a few questions. And one of the
Okay.
first one is, what inspired you to know so much about mushrooms?
Yeah, well, actually, going back to my childhood, short story. No, I've been gathering wild plants to eat or use as medicine since I was a kid, and spending so much time in the woods, doing a lot of hiking. I always saw mushrooms, so it was probably 10 years ago. I just got curious, started picking mushrooms, and I had one mushroom guide from Peterson's that actually isn't one of the better guides, it turns out. And for a few years, I was just on my own collecting mushrooms, and I'd come back from the woods with, 3 dozen different mushrooms, and then I'd pull out the mushroom guide and try to identify them. And having, one guide with only one drawing or picture per mushroom, it was pretty hard to match up, and there's a lot of species that are difficult. So I started working with other people, met a few like-minded individuals, and going out in the woods with other people and having them point out the different characteristics of the mushrooms. I learned, the learning curve really accelerated, and I learned how to identify. You start with the most common mushrooms that are common in the area, and then identify the easy ones, learn the characteristics, and then once I got a collection of guides and started using online resources, it got to the point where I was able to identify a lot more mushrooms more easily. Also, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I also started making tinctures, which I had been doing with herbs, but I, researched the different methods of taking wild mushrooms that are common in the Catskills and making medicines out of them. And it turns out we've got quite a few. And then a few years later, I was actually doing a demonstration on the medicinal tinctures and met another fellow named John Michelotti, and he proceeded to start a business called Catskill Fungi. And he, in addition to educational walks and mushroom cultivation, he makes the tinctures and sells them in retail stores. So he, formalized the process, researched, the medicinal benefits as well as proper packaging and how to, comply with any FDA or state regulations on terms of how you label the tinctures and what claims you can and cannot make. And you've probably gone through the exact same thing with cocoa raw products and how to label them, how to prepare them. So I've worked with him and still continue to work with him, mainly in the educational sphere, doing the mushroom walks and that sort of thing.
Tell us a little bit about the mushroom walks and the mushrooms you grow, please.
Okay, well, the mushroom walks, we're doing a lot of group hikes, especially with the Mid-Hudson Mycological Association. And with the pandemic, we had to, kind of pull back a little bit for safety. So what I ended up doing was a lot of private walks where usually it's a landowner who has property, they have forest on the land, and they just want to know what's growing there and is it edible, is it medicinal, or obviously common questions. So we did small group walks, up to 10 people with masks and social distancing. But basically we go around, look at the different areas that mushrooms grow in, and talk about the characteristics used to identify them. And along the way, hopefully we would find some edibles and some interesting mushrooms and about what they're growing in, how they grow, and then picking a few and looking at the macroscopic features that you would actually use if you're going to an online resource or a guide, and how could you get a positive ID, and also in what cases is it not possible to get a positive ID, in which case you'd want to fall on the side of cautiousness and, all right, this mushroom is common, but there's a poisonous one that looks like it. You probably wouldn't start by eating this particular species, start with the easy ones.
So interesting, and I'm so fortunate that I can send you pictures personally and get some identification for mushrooms. What is it's such an honor that I have some mushrooms on the and sometimes I really don't know what they are. Even I did grow up with mushroom picking in Austria. So if you also grow mushrooms, would you share us a little bit what you do, please?
Okay, well, yeah, so I'll actually show you some of my, I'm in my mushroom yard, and that's why I'm outside. And so I'll start with shiitakes. It's one of my favorite. So these are oak logs that have been inoculated. So you acquire spawn, which you can either grow out yourself, or there's commercial suppliers for growers that will sell you the spawn. So they've in a clean, sterile environment, they have grown out the spawn. And the main process, or the easiest process probably, is drilling holes in logs and using special tools to introduce the spawn into the log and to prevent contamination or other fungi from getting into the same log. You seal it with wax, and then you wait. Also place the logs in a proper area. So I'm under a Norway spruce. It's shaded, and you see back here, there's stone walls.
Erwin, you're too fast with the camera. Can you?
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so those are inoculated logs. So I have spawn in there for shiitake. Some of them may be oyster or lion's mane. I don't always label them. I just wait to see what grows out. But one of the things the mushroom needs to grow and basically consume the wood from the inside is the proper humidity. So it's actually worked out well that I have shade here. And then the stone walls, even in the summer when we have drought-like conditions, we still get cool evenings here in the Catskills. So those stones in the stone wall will actually condense water. And on a nice cool morning in August, you can go out and see water dripping off the stones. And those help maintain the moisture content in the logs. So the mushrooms will do their thing. And just like the wild mushrooms, every mushroom is consuming a certain type of substrate. The shiitakes and oysters that I have here are growing in wood, but most of the growth of the mushroom is invisible. It's inside the wood. It's called mycelium. It's like a white, fibrous, kind of shiny substance. And when the mushroom log reaches the correct temperature and humidity, that's when they fruit. So that's the part of the mushroom that we're more familiar with. It's actually a reproductive body, and its function is to produce spores. But in the process of producing those spores, those mushrooms also produce proteins, a lot of B vitamins, and depending on the species, a whole bunch of different medicinal compounds. And those medicinal compounds have been used traditionally. So traditional healers knew that certain types of mushrooms healed certain types of conditions. But now we've gotten to the point where we have hospitals and universities doing research, and they're actually identifying what's in the mushroom that makes it beneficial and what conditions of human illness or health it may be able to aid.
Wow. Okay, so the 3 mushroom groups are the ones you're growing, or is there more mushrooms you're growing?
I'm doing like 4 or 5. I also grow stropharia, which are also known as wine caps. They're delicious culinary, and those are very prolific. They grow quickly, but they grow in wood chips. So my wood chip piles are over near the same areas where I grow vegetables, so that the mushrooms in one season will run through those wood chips, break the wood chips down into basically within a year, you have nice black organic soil. but in the meantime, they fruit, and you can collect pounds and pounds of wine caps along the way.
So they're also good for vegetable gardens.
Yeah, it's a kind of a concept of permaculture that you use the wood chips. You can use different types of mulch. Grass cuttings and leaves are also rich grow environments. And in the first year, your benefit is that you get mushrooms. And the following year, you've created soil that you can use for cultivating vegetables. And well, I can talk about some of the other species.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this is getting more into some of the wild species that grow here in the Catskills, but I have examples of each. So first is chaga.
Looks like wood, huh?
Yeah. So those grow wild. Those are the ones that are very difficult to cultivate, but they're abundant wild, actually on birch trees. Then we have two more here. This is Mayataki.
So pretty.
And then that's just one kind of dried up example of lion's mane. So the Mayataki and the lion's mane can be cultivated, but they're also abundant wild. So the lion's mane grows in sugar maple and other maples and beech, but it could be found on almost any type of tree, including pine. And that's one of the most remarkable. It's a delicious culinary that some people compare it to crab meat. But in terms of healing properties, it's the only thing they know of that can heal the neural sheath lining. And it's being researched for Alzheimer's, dementia, um, brain and spinal cord injuries. So it does a lot of amazing things to improve neural and cognitive functioning. And I've been following the research on it. And just within the last month, researchers in Asia have come out with quite a few reports, but one of the researchers sequenced the proteins or the proteome in lion's mane and found 2,543 different proteins all exist in this single mushroom. So it's really remarkable. Next to it, I'll show you again, is the Mayataki.
Is it dried right now? Yes.
Yeah, those have been inside dehydrating. So those are they cultivated grow. You find them quite commonly in the Catskills, almost always at the base of oak trees. So it's another really delicious culinary, but it's also an amazing medicinal. One of the benefits is it reduces blood sugar. And I talked about the chaga and the reishi, which also reduce blood sugar, but I have had people who have high blood sugar and the reishi or the chaga didn't work. The maitake proves to be more effective at reducing blood sugar. So sometimes that's a medicinal solution to a high blood sugar that bypasses the whole pharmaceutical route. And then the other champion of wild mushrooms in the Catskills is reishi.
Perfect. Yes.
So those are also abundant in the Catskills. They grow almost always in hemlocks, which we still have quite a few of. And that was known as the mushroom of immortality in Chinese culture. It's been used for at least 2,000 years. And that has, like chaga, in a general sense, both those mushrooms are antiviral, selectively antibacterial. They provide immune support, which is very important, and they're anti-inflammatory. So if you look at the medical profession, they've discovered to a great extent that at least the symptoms, if not the causes of a lot of illnesses, have to do with inflammation in the human system. So they have produced, obviously, a lot of pharmaceuticals that they can patent and profit off that will reduce inflammation. But in almost all cases, all those pharmaceuticals also depress the immune system. So both mushrooms are immune modulators, which means if your immune system is too active, like in the case of an autoimmune disorder, the taking the mushroom will help your body find homeostasis and reduce the activity of the immune system. On the other hand, if your system, in an immunity sense, is depressed in some way, it will stimulate your immune system to be more active and correct the imbalance in your system. So these are two really amazing mushrooms, and as you can see, they're all the mushrooms I just showed you are dehydrated. So I collect them when they're abundant during the summer, dry them out so I have time, and then in the winter when things slow down on the farm a little bit, I spend a little time inside by the wood stove and make my tinctures.
I know I take all of them and I think it's incredible. And I know that reishi and chaga is not a mushroom you can eat. You have to dehydrate it and then in a certain way make a tincture out of it.
Yeah, so we've researched both traditional methods, and then we've had chemists at universities actually analyze our tinctures. And the optimal method largely seems to be a triple extraction. So we use alcohol. We actually use grain alcohol made from organic cane sugar, and that will leach out or extract different compounds that are alcohol soluble. Then we separate the alcohol from the mushrooms and do two decoctions in water. So we do one in hot water. Usually it's about 24 to 48 hours, and then another week or 10 days in cold water. So we have three different liquids. Two are water-based and one is alcohol-based, and then we blend those together. And our goal is to get our alcohol content to 30 to 35%, which seems to be optimal for both preserving the medicinal compounds without breaking them down. And actually, I can show you, since John has made a business of this, this is what the tincture bottles look like after the triple extraction is done, and you've blended them to get the optimal combination of the water-soluble and the alcohol-soluble compounds. So
A little further down, please. We can only see the top. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
yeah, so that's basically how you would purchase a tincture if you're looking to use it for either maintaining health or treating medical conditions. And basically, it's got a dropper bottle, and the dropper is calibrated. So basically, you fill the dropper twice a day, and you can just drop it on your tongue or mix it in with some kind of beverage. But as I've said, the medical research is really supporting what the traditional healers have known for a long time about many of the benefits and the health problems that you can actually deal with using the tinctures.
For example, I got a piece of mushroom from one of our friends last week, and she said, put it in water and make a tea out of it, of a reishi mushroom. What's the difference between taking the tincture and maybe just making a tea out of reishi? Do you know?
The tea will still be beneficial. Actually, even in the case of chaga, it's doesn't taste medicinal. It's really quite tasty. But water decoction will derive certain compounds that are water soluble, but to a certain extent, you're missing out on some of the alcohol soluble compounds. So you're getting some of the benefits, but the triple extraction really helps you get all the benefits that are possible from that one species. And then there's also, you can blend different types of mushrooms that, I do like maitake and shiitake all combined. So you'll have like the immune response support, blood sugar reduction, but, the shiitake also supports the lungs, which maitake does as well, but prostate and liver benefits. So, there's quite a process. And when we work with people who are taking the tinctures, we get feedback directly from them, how they took it and what they felt. So, there's a tendency to just trust the pharmaceuticals and the medical profession. But when you're healing yourself using mushrooms and also herbs, to a certain extent, we advise people, check with your own body. How are you feeling? When did you start taking it? Did you feel, a difference in your general health? And people can not necessarily self-diagnose, but really ascertain, is this benefiting me, and how is it, making me feel?
Mm-hmm. For example, with Kokorao, I use powderized mushrooms because we make powder elixirs. That would be triple extracted, then dehydrated, and then grinded.
Yeah, that's yeah. You have to be a little cautious about your sourcing, which I know you're probably pretty thorough with, but depending on the supplier, and you can buy all kinds of mushrooms online, and it might just be somebody harvested, dehydrated, and then ground the mushroom into a powder, in which case, depending on how you use it later, you'd only get some of the compounds. In other cases, the suppliers may have done a full triple extraction, dehydrated it, and created powder with it, in which case you'd have, all the compounds would be available.
Yeah, I make sure that this is the case. In the Catskills, we don't have a white ear mushroom called tremella, do we? Have you ever seen that?
No, that I believe mainly grows in Asia, but we have yellow tremella. It's grows on usually hardwoods, oaks, and sometimes it's called witch's butter. It is yellow. So it's in the same genus. It's edible. As far as the medicinal compound benefits, I don't think it has the same properties as the white tremella. And then there's another orange jelly, which looks very similar, also edible. It grows on hemlock, known as the Dacromyces.
Yeah, I know that one. Oh, you also showed me that one when we had a walk, when we took a walk together.
Yeah.
Where do you reside in the Catskills? Are you further north, or what area?
The town of Andes, New York. It's kind of this western central Catskills. So we're just a few miles west of the, if you look at the Catskill Range, you have a bunch of peaks over 3,500 feet. The last mountain that's taller than 3,000 feet is about a mile east of here. So we're kind of where the Catskills are kind of petering out and, turning into a high plateau.
I can see that mountain from my window. You're somewhere there.
Yeah, over the mountain a few miles.
Do you find
And
your
we're at, I was going to say, we're also about 1,700 feet in elevation above sea level.
Okay. For an Austrian, not that high, but it is still high for the Catskills, I know.
Yes.
Do you find your mushrooms when you go on hikes mainly around the area where you're staying?
I'm in a really good area. The farm I'm on is 23 acres, but it's almost completely surrounded by city-owned land, which is basically public land that you're allowed to hike on. And across the road from me, I have there's a small stream in a ravine, and on the edge of that ravine, I have all kinds of Norway spruce and hemlock growing. And those pine groves, I've really discovered a lot of native species of mushroom that are really abundant growing at the base of those pines. And some of the mushrooms that have a relationship with the trees only grow near certain types of trees. So I was able to find Amanita rubescens, which is in a family of mushrooms that includes some very poisonous ones, but that one happens to be edible. There's also one hallucinogenic mushroom in that genus, which I've also found pretty abundantly. People who are into culinary mushrooms are undoubtedly familiar with the porcini, and those are most commonly found near pines. So I find a lot of those around here. Going a little further up the mountain, I found all kinds of reishi, maitake, oyster mushrooms are always, common almost anywhere. I mean, they grow in different types of wood, but you can literally, John grew them in a pair of jeans, so they can be trained to grow on anything. Yeah, actually, I could show you one. some of the mushroom logs I showed you were inoculated with the sawdust method. There's another method called the totem method, which involves cutting logs into discs, and then you stack them up you basically make a sandwich with the mushroom spawn in between the discs of wood, and then you have to place them in some kind of enclosure to maintain the moisture. So this I did a couple years ago. This method doesn't usually work well, and it's in a black plastic bag, so it doesn't look great, but I just got my first oysters off this totem stack here. So I'll show you those.
Yes. Oh, yeah, here they are.
Yep, so that was a little surprise this morning when I was out here checking the area. That's the first time the totem method has worked for me, but those are oysters. I also found some on top of it's called Edgewood Mountain down in Ulster County, and I was definitely above 3,000 feet and found one tree just had some giant oyster mushrooms on. So those are one of the most prolific mushrooms. They're very common in the Catskills, and you can start finding them as early as May. And obviously, they can withstand some cold weather, since I did harvest them last week after quite a few cold nights, and we've had snow a few times. So that's another one, mainly a culinary herb, but I don't doubt it has some health benefits. All edible mushrooms have a pretty decent amount of protein, as well as some vitamins and minerals, particularly several of the B vitamins are common in a lot of the medicinal or the culinary mushrooms, including oysters, of course.
See, I didn't know oysters I find all the time on my property, even on my stairs we built out of old blocks. There was a lot of oysters this year.
Yeah, I actually was hauling garbage for somebody, and there was a bunch of oak posts. They were like 4x4s, and they were outside in a pile, kind of rotting. So I was pulling them out, and I found lion's mane, which is also grows wild. It's a little less common, but it had gotten the spores for that species had gotten into that oak, and I pulled a couple of nice large lion's mane off the oak, planks.
Mushrooms are just so fascinating, the way they grow and where they grow and what they do, and especially the benefits for us.
Yeah. So, and we've been talking about from a human health standpoint how beneficial the mushrooms are to consume, whether as a culinary, enjoyment or medicinally. But when you study mushrooms, there's also a lot of research coming out on the ecological role. And thanks to some of the research, as well as movies like Fantastic Fungi, a lot more people are becoming aware of the ecological importance, how under the soil, whether breaking down wood and other organic matter, or just growing in the soil. The fungi are actually working with the microbes, various types of bacteria and other, usually single cell organisms, but they're not just breaking down and decaying wood to make soil. They're actually helping trees and other plants uptake nutrients and water. And some of the research has really shown some amazing effects where the underground mat of mushroom mycelium, along with the bacteria, are transmitting nutrients and, in a sense, are transmitting information. So if a plant gets invaded with a pest, another plant that it could be a tree, it could be a shrub, hundreds of feet away, might get some chemical impulses through the soil that actually warn the plant that the pests are invading. And some of the plants have natural defenses, but they've documented that the plants are, in a sense, getting information from other plants thanks to the fungi.
See, I just wanted to say that I know that I read about it, how the plants are all communicating through mushrooms, and that we actually are all connected through mushrooms. And these are all new studies we just discovering, or people just discover. And that's why it's so incredible that you were so far ahead. I mean, I always went out in Austria with my parents to get culinary mushrooms, but I didn't know about the health benefits or nobody thought about it. We were just eating it because they taste great.
Yep, multiple benefits.
But
And we're no exception there. So far, there's not a lot of research on it, but if you look at the human system, they've identified about at least 260 species of mushrooms on and inside the human body. So, some of them, a lot of them are in the family of yeast, and they might be on our skin and our hair, but in the digestive tract, you'll also find different species of mushrooms that we believe they're playing some role cooperating essentially with the bacteria that live within our digestive tract. And when those fungi and microbes in our system are balanced properly, they're essential to good health. If there's an imbalance, obviously you can have health problems. So we're just like the soil in that the fungi are also part of us and, playing some role in maintaining our health.
so, Erwin, usually when I conduct these interviews, I have a certain set of questions. Who, after the talk we had, I cannot ask you. I don't know, it just doesn't fit into the interview, but I would like to know a few other things. For example, if you would have unlimited income, would it change the way you live?
I'd probably hire some people to help inoculate logs. Maybe buy like a big tractor and a big wood chipper, and my wine cap patches would be several acres large.
So you would definitely stay with mushrooms and get even further into it and maybe broadcast it further to people?
Yeah, and actually, most of what I do with mushrooms is very inexpensive. So, winning the lottery wouldn't really enable me to do things that I'm not already doing. It's you can disseminate spawn, you can collect either spores or mycelium from wild mushrooms, and then create a temperature and humidity controlled environment that's somewhat sterile, and you can grow out mushrooms. Or you can buy them from commercial suppliers, and it's pretty inexpensive. The main downside is time and labor. It is labor intensive to cut logs to 4 or 5 foot lengths and drill holes in them and introduce the spawn. So if I had a little more budget, I would be glad to hire people, train them how to grow mushrooms, and then get a team of people out and just have hundreds of logs and produce a bunch of mushrooms. I mean, we did at one farm we did about 200 oak logs with just one cold weather strain of shiitakes, and we did that with volunteer labor. So it was a little convincing people it was fun, which it actually is. If you have a mushroom cultivation party, it's pretty good. But if you want to do a lot, it's really just the labor of getting the materials, introducing the spawn, and then once you've done that, it pretty much proceeds on its own. So it's just a matter of having time to wait for the mushrooms to show themselves.
So you said you started as a little kid. Where were you born? In the Catskills?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm was in the town of Catskill, which is a river town right on the Hudson River. But from where our house was situated, I also looked about 10 miles to the west was the edge of the Catskill Mountain escarpment. So I grew up looking at the Catskills, and every time we had a chance, we hiked or camped in the Catskills. So, Hudson Valley, Catskills. So I'm both a river rat and a stump jumper.
So this is totally your backyard.
Yeah.
Good. And is there anything what would aspire you to be? Anybody who would aspire you to be?
In terms of people I admire, there's a lot of people who are doing research on mushrooms, and it's not that common on the university level to get like a doctorate. As a mycologist, you really have to major in biology, and then people specialize when they do their research in mushrooms. It's less common in North America than it is, say, in Europe or Asia. But there's a lot of do-it-yourself type mushroom people who are doing research. They're setting up labs in their houses. I have a little microscope lab which helps me study the mushrooms. And then folks have set up commercial operations where they take, a garage, a part of a barn, and start growing mushrooms. So the people who are kind of doing, figuring it out and doing it on themselves, there's people like William Padilla Brown, Peter McCoy are two prominent people who are both cultivating, but they're also doing research and educating other people in inexpensive and fairly easy ways that you can harness the power of mushrooms for yourself.
Are all the mushrooms John and you are using for extraction the mushrooms you find yourself, or do you buy mushrooms as well?
No, I mean, we're really so fortunate to be in the Catskills and, the edge of the Hudson Valley. There's all these species of medicinal mushrooms. The ones I've mentioned are all quite common. So in the course of spending time in the woods and sustainably harvesting, it's very important that people don't learn one type of medicinal mushroom and then, harvest everything they see. I harvest less than a third of what I see, and keeping that precaution in place, I still bring back enough mushrooms that I can make tinctures for myself and to share with people who are maintaining health or dealing with health problems.
I will put an email address of you into our interview so people can actually for next year's write you if they're interested in learning from you, going on a hike with you. And I will also put a link of John's extractions in there so people can buy it and try it for themselves and see the benefits of it. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time and explaining mushrooms to me and Kukurau followers. And I only work with a few of them, but your knowledge is so much bigger and it's always fascinating to me to learn more.
Oh, no problem. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care now.
You too.